Two empires. Two faiths. One city that would define centuries of rivalry. Imagine standing in Jerusalem as the streets echo with bells, calls to prayer, and whispers of conquest. Empires rose not just with armies, but with stories, stories of God, destiny, and truth. What began as private devotion transformed into a weapon, a compass for power, and a code for survival. Christianity and Islam, neighbors in geography yet strangers in politics, would shape civilizations in ways no one could foresee. The origins of this rivalry are hidden in dusty scrolls, imperial decisions, and the lives of ordinary people who had no say in history yet lived it every day. Faith became more than belief, it became identity. And identity, once tied to empire, can unite a people, or ignite centuries of conflict. Could it have been different? Could two growing religions have coexisted without centuries of tension? Or were they destined to collide, shaped by rulers, scholars, and the grinding wheels of empire? If stories like this fascinate you, subscribe to join us as we uncover hidden global truths. And tell us, where are you watching from? Could this happen in your country too? This is not just a story of religion. It is a story of power, fear, and the human drive to belong, and how ancient empires quietly turned faith into rivalry that still resonates across the world today. The ancient world was a mosaic of gods, temples, and sacred fires, yet none of it could hold an empire together on its own. Armies could march, walls could rise, but when loyalty wavered and borders trembled, empires needed something stronger, a story everyone believed. Faith, carefully shaped, offered exactly that, moral authority powerful enough to unite millions and terrifying enough to silence dissent. In the 4th century, the Roman Empire teetered. Civil wars had left scars on cities, and governors struggled to enforce order across vast, fractured lands. When Constantine embraced Christianity, it was hailed as spiritual awakening, but behind the veils of devotion lay political calculation. Suddenly, a once persecuted faith became the glue holding a crumbling empire together. Bishops gained influence, doctrine became law, and disagreements slowly became dangerous. Ordinary citizens felt it in subtle ways. Temples replaced with basilicas, rituals entwined with imperial decrees, faith no longer optional but part of survival. Centuries later, across the deserts of Arabia, a different story unfolded. The tribes were fragmented, loyalty scattered. Islam arose not only as belief, but as unifying force. Under the early caliphates, faith fused with governance, law, and military order. It did not ask permission from the empire. It became the empire itself. The desert winds carried more than prayers. They carried a system that would stabilize territories, bind tribes, and prepare the ground for centuries of rivalry with the older Christian world. From Constantinople to Damascus, the shifts were observed with caution. Persian diplomats whispered warnings, Byzantine strategists debated endlessly, and traders measured the impact on every caravan route. Faith had crossed a threshold. It was no longer a private matter. It was power, identity, and authority rolled into one. The transformation of faith into imperial power was subtle, almost invisible at first, yet it rippled through every corner of society. In Rome, councils convened ostensibly to define doctrine also solidified political unity. The Council of Nicaea, celebrated as a milestone of Christian theology, quietly marked the moment when heresy became treason and belief became allegiance. Ordinary people learned to navigate a world where salvation and obedience were intertwined, where a prayer could be devotion, and a single word could betray loyalty. Across the Islamic world, similar forces were at play. The caliphates expanded rapidly, bringing disparate peoples under one banner. Faith was the glue, but diversity demanded careful management. Christians and Jews could live under Islamic rule, yet always as defined outsiders. Cities like Damascus and Jerusalem became laboratories of coexistence and tension, where identity was measured in rituals, tax registers, and even the sound of bells or calls to prayer. Every neighborhood echoed the subtle lesson: belonging was tied to allegiance, and allegiance was tied to belief. And yet, this was only the beginning. As empires wove faith into their very fabric, they also planted the seeds of conflict. A doctrine defended by power becomes hard to question, a sacred map of the world that leaves little room for compromise. When Christianity and Islam eventually met as rival empires, they would do so with centuries of carefully cultivated identity behind them. The collision was inevitable, and its consequences would echo across continents for generations. When Christianity and Islam finally faced each other as imperial powers, it was not merely a clash of faiths, it was the meeting of two world systems, each forged over centuries of conquest, governance, and devotion. What appeared as religious conflict on the surface masked a deeper struggle over legitimacy, identity, and survival. Each empire had learned the dangerous power of belief, and both were determined to wield it. The Eastern Mediterranean became the stage for this collision. Byzantine officials watched in alarm as Islamic forces advanced across Syria, Egypt, and North Africa with startling speed. Cities long accustomed to Greek and Latin liturgies now heard Arabic echoing through the streets. Yet not all locals resisted. Some found the new governance more predictable, the taxation less burdensome, and trade routes unexpectedly secure. The lines between friend, foe, and opportunist blurred, as ordinary citizens navigated a world shaped by empires that understood the power of belief. In Constantinople, the fear was both immediate and existential. How could a young desert faith challenge the foundation of the old Roman world? Strategists argued, clergy preached, and the emperor himself pondered the fragility of an empire tied so closely to a single creed. Across Islamic lands, victories were celebrated as divine favor, yet leaders understood the delicate balance. Ruling diverse populations required pragmatism, negotiation, and sometimes mercy. Faith had become both shield and sword, a tool for cohesion and a source of tension. Across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, observers recognized the stakes. Merchants altered trade routes, scholars revised histories, and chroniclers in distant lands recorded every conquest and defeat with growing anxiety. Borders, once drawn in stone and river, were now etched in belief, invisible yet unyielding. And the world had only begun to feel the consequences. As centuries passed, rivalry hardened into memory, and faith became a lens through which empires judged one another. The Crusades did not spring from a single moment, but from generations of accumulated tension, fear, and inherited grievance. In Europe, tales of Jerusalem's lost streets grew darker with each retelling. The city became a symbol, not just of land, but of divine mandate and destiny. When armies finally marched, religion provided the language, but empire supplied the strategy, the logistics, and the cold, unyielding reality of war. Across Islamic lands, the Crusaders were initially a strange, almost alien phenomenon, foreign soldiers carrying crosses, wearing unfamiliar armor, and demanding allegiance to distant kings. Chroniclers in Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad documented confusion before outrage, observing that faith had become a tool of power that transcended borders. Every conquest, every siege, every treaty reshaped the mental maps of empires, reinforcing the idea that belief could both unify and divide on an unprecedented scale. Yet rivalry was never purely destructive. While battles raged and cities burned, translation, trade, and knowledge moved quietly between worlds. Greek philosophy preserved in Arabic texts, medical discoveries flowing from Baghdad to Sicily, artisans learning techniques across enemy lines. These exchanges revealed a paradox. Competition and conflict, driven by faith and empire, simultaneously fostered connection and innovation. By the time the Ottoman Empire rose, the lesson was clear: borders written in belief could ignite centuries of conflict, but they also created channels through which civilizations unexpectedly touched one another. Today, the rivalry between Christianity and Islam is often spoken of as distant history, almost mythical in its scope. Yet its influence is tangible, etched into city streets, architectural lines, and the rhythm of daily life across continents. In Cairo, Istanbul, Rome, or Jerusalem, the echoes of centuries-long collisions resonate in markets, neighborhoods, and classrooms. Every minaret, every cathedral, carries more than prayer. It carries memory, identity, and the silent weight of empires past. For ordinary people, these legacies are lived realities. Religious identity continues to shape opportunity, allegiance, and cultural expectation. Scholars trace trade routes, marriage alliances, and diplomatic decisions back to formative centuries when faith and empire were inseparable. Yet amidst grand narratives, the human stories remain vivid: families navigating coexistence, merchants maintaining networks across borders, thinkers daring to question inherited rivalries. The world they moved through was shaped as much by belief as by politics. History teaches a complex truth: faith can unite or divide with equal intensity. It can inspire monumental art, architecture, and moral reflection, yet also ignite fear, suspicion, and conflict. Understanding this duality allows us to see our world in layers, not merely in terms of right and wrong, but as the ongoing struggle of humanity to find meaning, belonging, and survival amid forces far larger than itself. Perhaps the most striking truth is how subtly these ancient rivalries continue to shape global consciousness. Political borders can change overnight, yet the mental maps drawn by faith and empire endure for centuries. A merchant in Fez trading with European ports, a scholar in Baghdad translating Greek philosophy, a monk in Rome preserving manuscripts. Their lives were guided by decisions made generations before, when rulers first fused belief with power. Every choice echoed forward, shaping societies far beyond the battlefield. Even today, conflicts, alliances, and cultural identities bear the imprint of those formative centuries. Yet alongside division exists resilience, communities finding ways to coexist, knowledge traveling across contested lands, and individuals carving paths through inherited rivalries. Faith, once weaponized by empire, continues to influence human experience, but it also offers bridges for understanding, dialogue, and connection. In the end, ancient empires taught humanity a paradox: belief can divide and unite, inspire awe and fear, oppress and protect. Recognizing this duality allows us to see our world not simply in terms of right or wrong, but as a tapestry woven from ambition, devotion, and the timeless human drive to belong. The echoes of ancient empires are everywhere, not just in crumbling monuments or dusty scrolls, but in the rhythm of bustling cities, the cadence of prayers, and the invisible lines that shape identity. Christianity and Islam, once wielded as tools of imperial power, left a legacy that continues to define borders, culture, and human connection across continents. Where armies marched, ideas traveled. Where beliefs clashed, knowledge and trade quietly flourished. Even in streets far from Jerusalem, Damascus, or Rome, decisions made centuries ago ripple through daily life, showing that faith and power are inseparable forces shaping human history. Yet this story is not only one of division. It is a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and adaptation. Communities learn to coexist, to share knowledge, and to preserve art, literature, and philosophy amidst conflict. Traders bridged empires, scholars translated lost texts, and ordinary citizens navigated intricate webs of allegiance, often keeping fragile connections alive. These human stories reveal that rivalry, while dramatic and bloody at times, also created unexpected avenues for cultural exchange and understanding, proving that even in conflict, there is space for cooperation, survival, and quiet brilliance. In the end, these centuries-long interactions teach a paradoxical truth: belief can divide and unite, oppress and protect, inspire awe and fuel fear. Recognizing this allows us to view the present with nuance, understanding that modern conflicts, alliances, and identities are shaped by choices made long before we existed. History reminds us that power, faith, and human ambition are deeply intertwined, and even in quiet moments, the echoes of the past continue to shape who we are, how we relate to each other, and the delicate balance between rivalry and coexistence that defines our shared world.